When I jumped into the void, her heart was all I had. But the void wasn't empty, it was full of them, the Heartless. Incognito being cookies, team exclusive, Ruby Galaxy. Heartless all around me, trying to make me forget a name. Whispering the void that the sacrifice was made in vain. Heartless all around me, but her heart won't let me fall. But love, she gave me burning hotter than the void is cold. The moment I jumped into the void, her light disappeared. And in this place, 1,000 shadows materialized in it. They had no eyes, but I could feel them staring at my chest. Where her ruby heart was beating, they could sense what I possess. The Heartless, spirit stripped of love, hollow in decay, drifting through the void forever, angry and afraid. They circle me like vultures, sensing something warm and fed. Forget her was the first thing that the darkness said. She's gonna sacrifice, was wasted, you're a fool for jumping in. You're one of us now, Heartless, let the emptiness begin. They pressed against my spirit, cold like nothing I had felt. Every memory of her, they tried to make me melt. Her smile, the way she pressed her heart into my trembling hands. Her eyes dim and peaceful like she'd always had his plans. The Heartless wanted every image, every sacred frame. They fled on love and tried to swallow her entire name. Heartless all around me, trying to make me forget her name. Swinging the void like the sacrifice was made in vain. Heartless all around me, but her heart won't let me fall. The love she gave me burning hotter than the void is cold. Days of centuries I drifted, time don't exist in there. The Heartless growing louder, thicker, multiplying everywhere. They showed me visions of her gone, dissolved, erased from time. They said she never loved you, giving hearts is not a sign of love, it's pity. She discarded you like everyone before, except the void, except the dark. There's nothing worth searching for, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't crack me for a moment. The isolation and the whispers had me almost broken open. Her heartbeat in my chest got quieter, almost still. The Heartless almost won, it almost consumed my will, but then I felt it underneath the noise, beneath the shade. A warmth that started in my ribs, where her ruby heart was laid. It pulsed not loud but steady, like the drum inside a cave. A frequency the Heartless couldn't mimic, couldn't crave, because it wasn't desperation, wasn't fear, wasn't need. It was purest love, a ruby daughter place I see. Heartless all around me, but something's waking up inside. Her love is not a memory, it's the engine in the guide. Like the sun inside my frame, every heart and spirit screamed and scattered from the flame. The love she gave me wasn't just a gift, it was a weapon. A frequency so pure the void itself began to lessen. The darkness cracked like glass, the whispers turned to silence. Her heartbeat was a war cry, louder than their violence. I felt the power surge through every particle I am. Not rage, not vengeance, not the beast, but something bigger than the void contracted. The heart just melted into dust, a love so powerful that even nothing is combusted. I broke through the edge of the void like a star being born. Her heart and my spirit fused, radiant and warm, but alive, alive with something that the void could never take. A love that doesn't dim, a love the darkness could break. I floated free into the Ruby Galaxy once more, with a heart still beating in me stronger than before. Heartless couldn't hold me. Her love broke the void. Team exclusive, Ruby Galaxy. She gave me her heart, and her heart saved me twice. Once from the void of space, and once from the void within. jumped into the void. When I jumped into the void. When I jumped into the void. When I jumped into the void. When heart was all I had. When I jumped into the void. 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 When I jumped into. When I jumped into the void. 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 When I jumped into the void.